Hello friends, today I'm going to solve LeetCode problem number 1422, maximum score after splitting a string. So in this problem we have a string S which consists of zeros and ones, and we are returning the maximum score after splitting the string into two non-empty substrings, that is left and right substring. Now how do we calculate the score? The score of the splitted string is the number of zeros in the left substring plus the number of ones in the right substring. So here we have our example, and we have been given the scores by splitting the string into different ways. So at least there must be one element in each of the substring. So we have that. So starting from at least one element in the left and rest of the element in the right, we move along and find the score for all the elements, leading to at least one element in the right and rest of the element to the left. Okay, so as we are finding the score, we count the number of zero in the left, which is 1, and count the number of ones in the right, which is 4 here, and we can find our score. And similarly we do the same for rest, and then we find the maximum of this score, which is equals to 5. Now the question is, how do we solve this? Are we gonna count split and count 0 and 1 every single time, or like how are we gonna do this? Let's start from brute force approach. So we have this string. Now if we are going to use brute force, so we start from index 0, and we suppose that the element at that index and every element before that is in the left substring, and the rest are in the right substring. So at index 0, 0 becomes in the left and the rest comes to the right. Okay, and now here if we are going to use brute force approach, then we will have to basically loop over each of the element in the left and again each of the element in the right to find the number of scores, right? So that would basically lead us to the time complexity of O of n times n, okay, which is not a good time complexity. So how can we actually solve it in just less time complexity? So for that, what are we gonna do is, let us look at this question, this over here. So what are we doing here? So let us first create the splits for this string. Okay, so first we have that, next we move one over here, and the next step again our split, this one is now moved to the left, and so on. Okay, so now what's happening, let's look at the pattern. So initially we have only 0 in left, so we add a +1, and now we count the total number of ones in right, which is 4, so that gives us a score of 5. Now what happened here is we moved 1 from right to left, so basically the count of ones in right decreased by 1, right? But there is no change in the left because we are only counting the number of zeros. So adding a 1 to left means we are removing a 1 from right, so that would result in a subtraction of 1 in the total score that we had previously. So from 5 we are reducing 1, and that would give us a 4. Similarly here we removed a 1 from right and put it to left, and that basically reduced the score by 1 for the right, and there is no change to the left. So that means the overall score reduced by 1, right? So from the previous score, which is 4, we subtract a 1 and we get a value 3. In next step we have 0 1 1. Now again I move 1 to the left, and then we have 0 and 1 to the right, and since we removed 1 from left, that I mean 1 from right, our score again reduced by 1. Again we now move 0, right? So this 0 is now moved to left, and we have 1 in the right. Now what happened here is we moved 0 from right to left. Since we are counting the number of zeros in the left, so that would mean that we are increasing our score to the left, and there is no change to the score in right, because towards the right we only count the number of ones. So that remains unchanged towards the right, but for the left, the number of count increased, right? The number of score increased. So overall the number of score increased by only one. Okay, so this was 2. So what happened is, from our previous score to our score increased by 1, so now we have a score equals to 3. So basically this is what we are going to use, this pattern. So what we are gonna do is, we are gonna start from basically count all the number of ones in this string, which is equals to 4. Now starting from index 0, we make that means that 0 and all the elements before it is in the left string. Okay, so since 0 is now towards the left, that would mean that we increase our score by 1. So what we do is, we increase our score by 1. Now we get a score of 5. Next, again we move to the next index, which is 5. Okay, so our index I from 0 moved to 1. Now 1 is moved from from right to left. That would mean that our score is reduced. So every time we encounter a zero, we increase score by 1, and every time we encounter a 1, we decrease score by 1. Okay, so this is how we are going to solve this problem. All right, now let's move on to our code and try to solve it. So starting from, let us create a running score, which is equals to 0, and then let us first find the total number of ones. Okay, so for let letter of string s, if the letter is equals to 1, then we are going to increase our running score by 1. Okay, and now let us create a score in which we will store the maximum of the running score, maximum value. So starting from 0, now for let I equals 0, I is less than string length minus 1 I plus plus. Okay, so why am I doing I less than the length minus 1? Because because our splitted string should not be empty, right? So if I do so if I am only taking index I equals to length minus 1, so in that case my last index will all be at this position, right? It will not be at this position. So when I am at this position, that would mean that all the elements from index 0 to that index is towards the left, and the remaining, which is this one element, is towards the right. But if I do just length, only length, so that would mean that my index will be at this last position. So all these will be towards the left and the right will be non-empty, right? But we do not want that, so that's why I am doing minus 1 over here. Now if we encounter as at index I is equals to 0, then what are we going to do is, here we are going to increase the score by 1. So running score plus plus, and okay, else our running score is reduced by 1, and our score is the max of our current score and running score. And finally we are going to return our score. So yes, that's all that we need to do. Let's try to run our code and check if this works. Okay, so it works well. You can add few more test cases. So I have added these test cases to check for only if there are zeros, and this test case is already present in our example to test for only ones. Now let's try to submit this code. Great. So talking about time complexity, since we have only we have for loop and there is no nested loops over here, so the time complexity is O of n and space complexity is constant here. So yeah, that's all about this solution. I hope you liked my solution. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching till the end.